Hi, I'm Konstantin Baum, Master of Wine, and today I'm going to do a blind tasting against one of the most famous wine tasters in the world, James SUCKLING. I have no idea what's in those bags in front of me, but just like in the Robert Parker video, Leon picked an 85, a 90, a 95 and a 100 point wine for me to taste. Will I know which one is which? Let's find out. James SUCKLING has done it all. He started his career 40 years ago at Wine Spectator, opened their European office and became one of their most influential wine critics over the following decades. In 2010, he decided to go solo and launched jamessuckling.com. At its core, the website is basically a database of his and his colleagues' tasting notes. He also has a YouTube channel where he regularly posts videos, and I found this old gem.
Carrie,
Hey,
how you
James.
doing, man?
It's good to see you, man.
Came a long way to see
Thanks
you. You
for
got some
stopping by.
wines?
Yeah, we got it, man.
The good old days and two of the most influential wine people of that time. James created a glass collection, a wine course, holds these big wine tasting events, and has a wine bar in Hong Kong. So he's certainly one of the more entrepreneurial wine critics. SUCKLING often gets criticized for inflating scores, as he generally rates wines higher than Robert Parker or Vinnes, for example. On his website, he writes that I rate using the 100 point scale. I've used this point system for close to 40 years and I still believe it's the simplest way to rate a wine. I do agree with that. A wine that we rate 90 points or more is outstanding. It's a wine we want to drink a glass of and is an outstanding purchase. If you rate wine 95 points or more, it's a must buy. If you can afford it, I would add. If we rate a wine less than 88 points, it might still be worth buying, but proceed with caution. I certainly wouldn't recommend spending your money on anything rated lower. There's quite a big difference compared to the approach robertparker.com uses, as they would still consider a wine with a score of 87 points good to very good. If you look closer at his scores and compare them to Parker's, a clear pattern emerges. The bulk of robertparker.com's scores start at 83 points, while SUCKLING's start at 86 points. The majority of Parker's scores are between 87 and 92 points. This segment represents 2/3 of all of the scores. With SUCKLING, 2/3 of all of the wines are scored between 90 and 93 points, a narrower and higher segment of the 100 point scale. It still blows my mind to see those numbers laid out like that, as most wine critics only use a very small part of the scale. While assuming that both publications score similar or the same wines, this indicates that SUCKLING scores are generally 2 to 4 points above Parker's, which are oftentimes 1 or 2 points above my scores. Enough statistics for today, let's get into the wines. I don't know what those wines are, and I don't know which one is the 85, the 90, the 95 or the 100 point wine. I will have to assume that I would score most of these wines lower than the score that they actually received. So this is going to complicate things for me. Am I up for the challenge? Let's find out. People have been asking in the comments, and yes, I'm right now using the Gabriel glass. If you ever wonder which glass I use or which wines I've tasted, check out the description below the video. So wine number 1. White. So the wine is fairly pale in color, indicating that it's a young wine. It smells of apple, a little bit of apricot. It's, well, there's just fruit there. There's not like wood, barrique aroma, spice notes or anything like that. It's very fruit driven. On the palate, it's juicy with some residual sugar. The acidity is high though, so it doesn't really feel sweet. There's a good lift, well, it's lifted by the acidity, and the finish is pretty good. I think it's a pretty decent wine. There's also this slightly flowery note. I would call that white blossoms. So it's quite pretty. For me, this screams Riesling. I think it is very typical Riesling. It could be from other places, but I'm pretty sure that it's a German Riesling. And it feels like something from the Mosel. For me, it's this kind of slightly flowery, very delicate flavor profile. So I'm going to say this is a Mosel Riesling from a recent vintage, 20, 2020, I'd guess. And yeah, it's nice. So this is where math comes into play. I wouldn't rate this 85 points and I wouldn't rate this 90 points. For me, this is more like an 86 point wine. So now I gotta add another 4 to 6 points on top of that. So I'm guessing this is the James Suckling 90 point wine. It's a good wine for me, but it's more like the entry level wine from a really good estate, a Gutswein or something like that. Really well made, but nothing extraordinary. I feel pretty comfortable with the start. Let's move on to wine number 2. Another white. So the color is again pretty light, indicating that this is a young wine. On the nose, this is very aromatic, but it has different aromas than wine number 1. It's more intense, more grassy, more spicy notes. I think this smells very much like Sauvignon Blanc. On the palate, it actually has a bit more body and structure than what I would expect from Sauvignon Blanc in general. So I'm guessing there might be an addition of maybe Semillon, something like that, which is a typical cuvée in Bordeaux, in the Bordeaux region. It doesn't finish very long. It's a little bit simplistic. It's not a very complex wine. There's no depth there. I'm going to say this is a simple Sauvignon Blanc from Bordeaux, from the Entre-deux-Mers region maybe, a recent vintage, maybe a cuvée of Sauvignon and Semillon, not 100% sure about that. For me, this is a good wine, but not a great wine by any means. I'm going to rate this 83 points. And I therefore guess that this is the 85 point wine on jamessuckling.com. All right, on to wine number 3, which comes in a huge bottle. Not really a sign of quality, but it kind of indicates where it might be from. The color is quite a bit darker. It's even maybe a little bit cloudy. And it's not just white, there's a bronze tinge. It smells kind of interesting. It's a little bit funky, a little bit wild. It smells of green apple, like a crunchy pear. There's a little bit of spice, a little bit of yeasty flavor coming through as well. On the palate, it actually has quite a lot of richness and weight, but the finish is very fresh, very lively, a little bit grippy, textured. So this is good stuff. So this is certainly a more profound wine than the previous 2, but it's difficult to say what it actually is. To be honest, the bottle shape really helps me here, because this high Schlegel bottle is one that is generally only found in Germany and in Alsace in France. There are some other exceptions, but yeah, this is a good pointer. Stylistically, this feels like a Northern European wine too. But then, what grape variety? So the flavor profile and the acidity could actually be Riesling, but not quite. And on top of that, this color really is quite helpful. It's a dark color, even though I don't think this wine is very old. So I'm guessing that this might be from a grape variety that has a little bit of skin color. Pinot Gris and Gewürztraminer come to mind here. And as I don't get any flavors of roses and flowery notes, I'm guessing this might be Pinot Gris. There's also a little bit of honey character coming through, which is also a pointer of Pinot Gris. Fun fact, in my first MW tasting exam, I actually messed up a flight of 4 wines that were all Pinot Gris, and I just couldn't get to Pinot Gris. I was funneling, trying to limit the options available, and Pinot Gris just kind of fell out of my personal funnel, and I therefore messed up that paper, even though I got most of the wines right, the other wines, but that flight was wrong. So that made me come back the next year, and now I never forget Pinot Gris when I'm doing a tasting. So yeah, I'm going to say this is a Pinot Gris. It doesn't feel like a German Grauburgunder. It's more Alsatian in style. It's pretty dense and concentrated, but not sweet, which is, well, lots of Pinot Gris have a little bit of residual sugar. This feels very grippy and tight. I don't think this is the 100-point wine. I would rate this 93 points. So I'm guessing this might be the 95-point wine. So the last wine of the tasting, and will it be another white? No, it's a red. This is red, but pale red. So, well, it's like a ruby red, not too concentrated. I can see my fingers through the wine. And as you know, this is quite helpful when it comes to blind tasting red wines. The wine smells of ripe cherries, blackberries. There's a little bit of spice from the wood, from barrique aging. There's also a little bit of clove flavor coming through, a little bit of spiciness. This is certainly still very young, but really well made. On the palate, it's grippy and fresh. The acidity is present, but it's not like a lot of acidity. Tannins have good grip. So overall, this is a really well-made, very balanced wine, with good structure, good freshness. It's not concentrated, super alcoholic, tannic wine. It's more of a refined and elegant style. Due to the color, I would actually say this appears to be a Pinot Noir. I mean, the color could also point to Grenache or Cinsault or Gamay, for example, but this feels very Pinot-esque. Sometimes you just know what it is, I think. Well, now I don't feel as confident anymore, but no, I'm pretty sure this is Pinot. Which brings up another issue, because if this was the 100-point wine, which I don't really think, but if it was a 100-point Pinot, I mean, even Leon wouldn't have the balls to buy a bottle of 100-point Pinot, because that's like a few thousands of euros guaranteed. Pinot Noir, especially from the best regions, has gone up exponentially in price. The best of the best are so expensive that no one can afford them anymore. But billionaires, and yeah, no, I don't think that. I don't think so. So this is certainly a Pinot from a cooler climate region, and I think it feels more old world in style. It could be from Germany, but I actually think this smells and tastes like a really good Pinot Noir from Burgundy. I would guess maybe from the Côte de Beaune, because it's a little bit more plush, round and ripe than what you would get in the Côte de Nuit. And it's a fairly recent vintage, so maybe 2019. A young, fresh, vibrant, high-end Pinot. I would rate this 91 points maybe. So now I'm really confused. So I don't think this is the 100-point wine. If it was Pinot from Burgundy, that doesn't work. So wine number 3 must be the 100-point wine then. And I didn't really feel that either. Anyways, due to the logic of price and availability even, I mean, you can't just buy a 100-point wine from Burgundy. I would say this is probably the 95-point wine, and wine number 3 therefore must have been the 100-point wine. All right, now it's time for the big reveal. Wine number 1. I thought this was a Riesling from the Mosel, and I thought this should be the 90-point wine, even though I would rate this lower. But it was a pretty good example, if it was a Riesling. Otherwise, it was a terrible example. Let's find out. Oh, good start. I see the VDP eagle here, which means it's from Germany. So it is a Riesling, it is from the Mosel, and it is the 90-point wine, as you can see here on the back. 1 for 1. So wine number 2, I thought this was a Sauvignon, maybe Sauvignon Semillon blend from Entre deux Mers in Bordeaux. I thought this probably is the 85-point wine. It was decent, it was good, but it was nothing to rave about. So let's find out what it is. Okay. I'm so wrong here. So first of all, I didn't get it all wrong. This is the 85-point wine. But apart from that, I was pretty wrong. This is apparently a Passerina from the Abruzzo region in Italy. Yeah, you live, you learn. But it apparently got 96 points from Luca Maroni. But that's a different story. Let's move on. So wine number 3. I thought this was a Pinot Gris, a very good one from the Alsace region. This, in the end, I decided that this might be the 100-point wine, even though I rated it far lower. But let's find out. Oh, so this was the 100-point wine. Apparently, it got 100 points on James SUCKLING. I don't think it's a 100-point wine, but it's a really good wine. And it's from one of the top producers, Domaine Humbrecht. Olivier Humbrecht is also a master of wine, and they're making great wines. This is their Clos Urbain Rangen de Thann, which is a great site in the south of the Alsace, a very hot site that produces quite concentrated and rich wines, but this is actually really well balanced. I mean, it has 13.5% of alcohol, but it's really well balanced. It's really elegant, but not 100 point. Sorry, Olivier. All right, this must mean that wine number 4 is the 95-point wine. I thought it was a Pinot from Burgundy, from the Côte de Beaune. And yeah, I didn't rate it 95 points. I didn't think it was extraordinary, but let's see what it actually is. Aha, 2020 Domaine Faiveley, Gevrey, Chambertin, Premier Cru, les Cazetiers. Or Cazetiers? Cazetiers. So those of you who know Burgundy already know that this is not Côte de Beaune, it's Côte de Nuit. Gevrey Chambertin produces some amazing wines. I think this is very good, but it's not a 95-point wine in my book. It just lacks the depth, concentration, complexity that I would expect from a 95-point wine. But I gotta say, I mean, this is very good. It's 2020 vintage, so it's still very young. Some of these wines do need time to develop and become more complex as the fruit flavor kind of recedes. The wine develops more aromatic complexity and depth, and this might happen with this one. Okay, this was not a complete write-off. I got some of these wines pretty much spot on, but yeah, I do have to say that the ratings for me are too high. I do rate those wines lower than what JamesSuckling.com did, and I feel quite confident that other people would also agree with my ratings. I do think the wines were good though. They showed really well. They were quite typical. But in the end, you can still use these ratings by just taking away a few points in order to get to a score that you can compare to other platforms. The problem with inflation of scores is that some wine critics like to score a little bit higher because that's how you get picked when wineries promote their new vintage or when wine merchants try to sell wine. You get more visibility, and that obviously helps you, might help your business. But it also just makes scores pointless because in the end, if every wine gets 92, 93, 94, 99, 100 points, then it doesn't really help you. It doesn't really help the consumer. It doesn't really help anyone. My favorite wines in the tasting were the Pinot Gris from Zind Humbrecht, not the most typical Pinot Gris, but a really good one. I also really liked the Riesling, more entry level, but really good. The Pinot was also delicious, but still too young. And this was more, well, it's a quaffable wine. It's not something to rave about. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please like it down here. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. The question of the day is, do you use Suckling scores? Do you not use them? Let me know down below in the comments. I hope I see you guys again very soon. Until then, stay thirsty.